Enchantments are such a cool, unique class mechanic, the ability to turn your existing abilities into these powerful passives that you can do entire builds around. It's just a shame then that there's only one slot to play with. Hello, my fellow sorcerers. How are you this fine day? I wanted to take a moment to talk about this class that we all play. Or I say we all, a lot of us, most of us, it's the most popular class according to Blizzard's own statistics, but I would put it to you that it is the weakest class, again, according to statistics. Now, I want to point out at this early stage that weakest and worst aren't synonymous. The Sorcerer is fantastic fun, and it is by far my favourite class, and I love playing it. I like so many of the skills, I like the synergies, I like the flavour, I like the aesthetic, I like, as the kids say, the vibe. But... Can I use it like that? But I maintain that it is the weakest class. And I maintain that on a factual basis, as Sorcerer generally struggles to push Nightmare Dungeons the most, generally struggles on Uber Lilith the most, outside of the recent breakthrough of the Saga Blizzard Blitz, but that build literally only kills Uber Lilith, it doesn't do much to the rest of the game, unless you use my version of Blizzard Ice Spikes that I came up with and showed you guys a few days ago now, and I was honestly really happy that that was one of the ways to actually crack Uber Lilith for sorcerers. It at least lets me know I'm not, completely a million miles off with the builds I bring you. But hey, the point remains that there is definitively less high-level, highly geared sorcerers than every other class, despite the fact that they are the most played class, which is very telling of one thing: people giving up on the class and changing to something else. And that's not ideal, is it? And I don't want this to be about, I just want bigger numbers and then I'll be happy, because that's not really a fix to what I think are a few fundamental problems with this class. Yes, it would be nice if we could use Fireball as a proper build, if we could use Incinerate as a proper build, if we could do some old school Frozen Orbin, if we could take any given ability and make an entire build about it. But that's just not the case, and I don't think it's fair to expect that to be the case. Every class has its own problems in every game. Balancing is hard, games design is hard, and that should always be sort of understood and remembered when discussing how something is. Diablo 4 on the whole has been a fantastic time and is a very well crafted experience, but as with all things, there are missteps, unavoidable ones, and ones that we're here talking about. So yes, I don't just want numbers pumped so we can swap to a different spell and make that the only spell we cast. So that said then, the big 13-page patch of doom that's coming soon with all the class buffs, I don't think, even if we do get significant number bumps on certain skills, is going to change some base level design flaws and restrictions that I think Sorcerer has that kind of cages them a little bit when it comes to pure build fun and creativity. So let's kind of go down what I mean, starting with the example I used to start this whole thing off. The enchantment slots, soft unnerfed as it were, from the beta changes when at level 25, Sorcerer along with Necro proved to be the best, strongest class in the game. That wasn't really a fair representation, it was level 25 on World Tier 1 and 2. Having as an easy example, the Ice Blades enchantment go from 20 seconds to 40 seconds, absolutely murdering that playstyle, was, I want to say, a little bit of an overreaction. But again, I don't want to just purely stress on numbers, but that is a way numbers can spawn an entirely different fun playstyle, and it's not really a damage thing. If they made Ice Blade do 10 times damage, yeah, that would suddenly make it good, but it wouldn't necessarily make it fun. Being able to spawn them constantly is what's fun. I don't really mind if it's doing tip-top meta damage, just that it works again. Outside of certain niche builds like the Ice Blade hybrid I worked into Lash, which is still really, really cool and I'm still very, very proud of. In any case then, let's talk enchantment slots, as I hinted at the beginning as one of the main problems. You know, sorcerers used to have 3 enchantment slots instead of 2, but that got changed along the way. I think at this point it is very clear that 3 enchantment slots would not only be balanced, but a very good thing, as it would allow some actual genuine synergy and creativity amongst your choices. And hell, it would at least give you a second choice, because you don't have a second choice. You get one choice, because the other one is always going to be Firebolt, at least in most builds. Obviously, if you're playing like Firewall or a pure burning damage over time build, you don't need Firebolt, but that's so weak that it's almost a non-factor. And in all of this, I do want to say, of course, if you don't care about doing competitive damage or pushing or doing something that's actually, you know, effective and just want to kind of get by or struggle with your favorite thing because you like it that much, that's completely fine. But the argument that just play the weak thing if you want to doesn't really hold water when it is human nature to want to min-max to efficiency size yourself to, that was a fun word, isn't it? Efficiency size. To actually push to what is best. That is fun in its own right, and wanting something that you prefer to be not necessarily best, but at least so competitive that you can viably in your mind use it, isn't a bad thing to want. So with Firebolt always being one of our enchantment slots, we get extremely limited on the synergies we can do. Outside of hardcore sorcerers, it would be nice to be able to put Flame Shield and get this free survive every 2 minutes, but you just don't have room for it. And the reason that we don't is, as I'm sure you're aware, Devouring Bloody Blaze. It's not that this is inherently bad, because it's a really strong passive. It's good to have it. It's so powerful. But that's almost the issue of itself. It's too powerful. It's to the point where you have to work Burning and Devouring Blaze along with the Burning Paragon board into every single sorcerer build, because not doing so is severely crippling yourself, which means you end up with sorcerers raining down icicles, literally ice, and then it's setting enemies on fire so we can crit them harder with the fire synergy passive. I would genuinely take the nerf that would be make Devouring Blaze only work with fire-based skills, just so we could stop using Firebolt enchantment and start actually experimenting with different synergies between them. That is the kind of thing that I'm talking about, a fundamental mechanical issue that really restricts how you play. The other one that comes to mind, of course, is this lovely row here. Flame Shield, Frost Nova, Ice Armor, and Teleport. And to quickly get vulnerability out the way, that is another huge issue here. Frost Nova is essentially our only reliably good way to apply vulnerability. You've got a bit of Frozen Orb, you've got Ice Shards, but it's just not great. Whereas a Frost Nova ring is, but that requires you to be melee, it requires you to play in a certain way, to work with Raiment of the Infinite that we'll get to. It pigeonholes you into always having this because vulnerability damage is too good, and because you always have to have this, you have to play in a way that you can use it, which is restrictive and melee and not what a lot of people consider the fantasy of the spellcaster. And I don't want to touch more on that because I think vulnerability as a mechanic is just an issue in the game as a whole, and I think a few classes don't have enough ways to apply it, given how good and mandatory having a source of it is, that it does really hinder what they can do, but we will perhaps bring that up in its own separate little topic later down the line. There is a serious problem if 96% of sorcerers, that is accurate information, have all 4 of these abilities on their bars, that tells you 2 things. That the defensive skills are either too good, or that Sorcerer is too weak without all of them on. It's the latter as a spoiler alert, because even with them all, we tend to fall over more than the other classes, at least from the experience of those that I've spoken to and seen, and we need them all because we have to be able to consistently get protection, to consistently get barrier synergy, because barrier synergy is one of the few ways we can compete with the stronger classes. So you're there left with 4 of your ability slots out of 6 always chosen for you. The last one generally tends to be an ultimate. That is 5 out of 6 slots, which then leaves 1 left, which essentially translates to, despite the fact that there is 4 here, 5 here, 3 more here, don't even get me started on just all of Conjuration being neutered as a main offensive tool. That's really sad in itself, and it's such a fun school of magic, summoning things that kill everything for you, and I'm sure my Necromancer friends can understand the pain of wanting things that you summon to be a viable way to focus on. Then we get 4 more down here. 14 skills, 14 spells, and any given build that wants to, do well, only picks 1 of them to put on your bars, alongside always 4 defensives and an ultimate. I'm generalizing, a couple don't. I have my Blizzard along with Ice Shards up that works extremely well. It doesn't use an ultimate, but that's the kind of extreme level of sorcerer creativity while still being competitively good. Ooh, you chose to swap your ultimate for another normal ability? Aren't you feeling crazy today? And that kind of saddens me. Because imagine a world where you can actually put multiple offensive skills on your bars. Maybe you want to have Chain Lightning and Charged Bolts and Ball Lightning and just be throwing out different lightning spells, just casting shock constantly back and forth. But you can't because of 2 reasons. You need all 4 defensive skills, and you don't have enough of this sweet blue stuff to cast more than 1 spell. Yes, there are ways to get infinite mana, but they require you to A, get to like level 80 plus, and then B, have enough perfectly rolled mana reduction, resource generation, max mana, and lucky hit to actually supply yourself with enough resource to keep casting your chosen skill, which in of itself is really sad. It says a lot that the second most popular build and one of the 2 champion builds at the moment is Lash, which doesn't spend any of your class core resource. That has to be a mark of, perhaps there's something going on here. Ice Shards is of course the other and most popular and equally powerful build, but until you get your mana problem sorted, you can't really play it early game without standing around waiting to regen. So you have this compound issue where you can't use more than 1 offensive spell because you need your defensives, and even if you didn't need your defensives, you don't have the resources to support using more 1 spell, and at the same time, you have no reason to, because it is more effective and powerful to just make 1 spell really good and just spam it forever. That, you might argue, isn't a bad thing. It's fun to just spam your 1 good, fun, powerful spell, and that might be fair enough, but in a world where someone goes, oh, I want to be like a full fire sorcerer, I want to throw down a flame wall, drop a meteor, start channeling Incinerate, summon a Hydra, whack it all on, it's like, well, you can do that, you'll do okay at your own level content, right? But at the same time, you're going to be severely crippled and weakened compared to anyone running one of the current selection of, min-max meta builds, and that feels extremely saddening that we have so much option, but in reality have such little options. And something that I think is very much worth talking about is the fact that intelligence, our primary stat that we want as much of as possible, increases your resistance to all elements. Resistance to elements is utterly broken at the moment and essentially doesn't work. You could have 5,000% cold resistance and still get one-shot by a cold explosion. It's just broken. Blizzard have owned up to it, they talked about it in the campfire chat, and they're wanting to fix it by Season 2. So for the next, 4 months, we have to walk around knowing that our main class strength defense is actually just not doing anything, so that's what makes sorcerers so relatively squishy, because we get hit really hard by, of course, physical damage, but now we get hit really hard by elemental damage, which we're supposed to be good at handling. If you don't have disobedience on your gear, you might as well go home, essentially, and even then, you still have stuff like this happen consistently, where you just get one shot out of nowhere. And yes, that's not sorcerer exclusive, and yes, of course, that's what happens when you play high nightmare dungeons, but it still feels bad to be the class where one-shots completely out of the blue when otherwise everything was fine tend to happen the most, primarily because of just a simple element of stats not working. Then, lastly, we have to talk about the uniques that Sorcerer has access to. So, yes, this is something that's not completely unique to Sorcerer, but I do think it is endemic of a major, at the current moment, class design issue, and Sorcerer particularly suffers. Especially if you're a Druid player out there still waiting for your build-enabling headpieces to drop, I really do feel for you. But what I'm getting at is we have Esu's Heirloom, which is just fine. It's not overly interesting, but it is at least good. Then we have Raiment, which is almost too good. It's warping. Literally, it pulls everyone in and stuns, but it also warps the class around it. No matter what sorcerer build you are doing, you have to have Raiment because it is too good. Which means you have to have Teleport, which reinforces your ability choices chosen for you, and it means we can't ever wear a chest where a lot of damage mitigation comes from, which exasperates the whole, you're dying thing. Granted, if you're pushing super hard content, taking Raiment off is something that's viable and is done, but generally speaking, it's just too good to ignore, and arguably one of the best uniques in the game. As opposed to every other one, which are all kinda middling to garbage. We have 4 build-enabling uniques, 2 of which both affect Fireball, and one of them makes you do 70% less damage for the privilege. I've tried to make this work and it just doesn't. But all 4 of them don't enable the builds that they're trying to, because those skills are just too weak or mechanically flawed inherently, and that is such a great shame, and something that I really do think holds Sorcerer back, at least taking that next level of truly fun and varied to play. So you have 4 build-enabling uniques, none of which enable the builds they're supposed to enable. So again, your creativity is pigeonholed. And I think as we bring this to an end, as I've probably gone on for too long now, that's the point that I want to stress on. I don't care about having numbers increased, I don't care about doing the most damage out of every class, I care about 2 things. Being able to have fun, which currently I do really enjoy Sorcerer, or I wouldn't be having this talk. But 2, I care about being able to be creative. But creative in the sense where, in doing so, I'm not making it impossible to, do hard content. I want to be able to make choices and come up with things without having certain things so needed because either you're too weak without them, or so needed because they're too powerful to not have, that you end up pigeonholed. I want to not have to have Fireball enchantment, I want to not have to take 4 defensive abilities, and that's something I hope eventually gets addressed, and honestly the simplest and easiest way is just give sorcerers back your 3rd enchantment slot, and I think instantly the class would feel so much more fun. Let me know what you guys think, of course. How are you finding Sorcerer? How are you finding this little talk? I say little, it's gone on a lottle, and I would love to know your thoughts, especially on the other classes too, if you play not Sorcerer but still were interested in this. I just want to have less of every given build predefined for you due to how the class is currently constructed. For now then, like if you enjoyed this, subscribe and hit the bell for more, consider supporting the future of the channel on Patreon down below, and until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice, to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.